my name's Phoebe, and I'm going to talk to you about what happens to our brain as we age. Specifically, I'm going to talk about what happens to brain connectivity as we age. To help understand the concepts in this lecture, I suggest the neuroimaging, neuroanatomy, and other aging ENIGMA-U lectures as prerequisites. As we age, we think slower and we move slower. Nearly every sensory, so what we feel and how we move, and cognitive, how we think, function, faces some degree of age-related decline. For example, walking, moving, controlling your hands and facial muscles. We move slower, not just because of physical limb limitations, but also because our brain's control over our body weakens. We have more trouble learning new information. Committing new information to memory can take longer. We have slower processing speeds. Our brains can't take in or manipulate information as fast anymore. Such slow processing can make multitasking way more difficult. Strategic memory, which helps you remembering names and numbers, actually begins to decline at age 20. Our prospective memory, which is remembering to do something in the future, becomes poorer. The brain may put appointments that you need to go to into storage and then not access them until something actually jogs your memory. So all of these abilities and many more rely on the brain functioning properly as a network. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Here we have a map of all of the airports in the world, connected by all the possible flight paths between them. This is a network, a group or system of interconnected things. The air traffic of the world operates efficiently most of the time due to the way these flight paths are set up. You can see by the green lines that there are many, many more short distance connections and relatively fewer long distance connections. This is the most efficient way to set up a network to allow people to travel as quickly as possible from one place to another. Imagine there were only short connections. It would take me forever to visit home in Melbourne, Australia, way down here, from where I live here in New Mexico. On the other hand, I would be thrilled if there were one single long distance flight from rural Santa Fe all the way to Melbourne, but there would be perhaps only 2 people, me and my partner, on that plane due to the low demand for that particular route. This would be a very inefficient use of resources. So we had efficient flight paths with many little hops and then a few long distance connections from these hub airports so that we can navigate the world in just a short 30 hours. This is what makes the world such a small place, hence the name of this type of network, small world network. Brains are also a small world network. Instead of having airports, the brain has regions. These are the cell bodies of the neurons that live on the outermost surface and some parts of the inner of the brain. Instead of having flight paths, the brain has the neurons' axon bundles, aka the white matter, all here in the middle, which forms the connections between the regions of the brain. A healthy brain functions efficiently by optimizing its many, many, many short distance connections, as well as its fewer but highly important long distance connections. Thus, we can say that brain connectivity is the pattern of connections between regions of the brain. The reason we can move fluidly, make complex plans for the future, multitask, and remember things with great detail is because the brain is connected in this special way. Here is an example. This is a side view of the brain, so sliced right down the middle. Imagine here would be the nose, here's the back of the head, the top of the head. This is a computer reconstruction of the external surface of the brain, the grey matter. And here's the same surface, but organized by colors into regions. One region might be important for controlling movement, another might be important for planning behaviors, etc. If we go ahead and we make the outer layer of the brain invisible, we can see the many, many connections contained within the brain, just like the flight paths on our air traffic map. Now, this network looks very different throughout our life. As we are developing, we make more connections, up to 100 trillion connections, in fact. But as we age, our brain connectivity starts to decrease. Now, why is this? So as we grow old, we lose parts of the gray matter. So cells and neurons die. This is a younger adult, this is an older adult. And when cells and neurons die, we see what we call atrophy, which is basically where the brain shrinks. So you can see here that the brain should extend all the way up to the skull surface here, but in the older brain, you can see a big gap where the brain is actually starting to shrink. We're losing that gray matter. Here, these are the ventricles of the brain. In a younger adult, they're a lot smaller. In an older adult, they appear larger because the brain itself, the volume of the brain is shrinking. So not only do we lose the gray matter, the brain regions, we also lose parts of the white matter. So we basically, beginning around the age 50 or 60, this starts to happen. So imagine here, this is a slice of the brain. If you cut down top of the head parallel to the face, so the white areas of this image here are healthy white matter. The orange dots are where parts of the tissue are actually starting to die. This is an example of what the axon in healthy white matter might look like. And this is an example of what the axons in one of these orange dot areas might look like. As we get older, we have more and more of these white dots, which is normal. But in some cases, there might be an excess due to a neurodegenerative illness or disease. So as we grow old, not only are brain regions shrinking, but the integrity of the connections between them are becoming weaker. So therefore, there's less connectivity, and using our metaphor from before, the major airports around the world closing some of their terminals, becoming smaller, while also at the same time, some of the flight paths have become too dangerous to reliably traverse, so we shut them down. So here's another image of the brain. This time we've sliced across this way. In the brain, instead of needing to transport people from, say, US to Australia, we are actually transporting information from A to B. Let's say, and this is a very simplistic example, you see a space at the supermarket and you want to plan what you can make with it. Sorry, you see a spice at the supermarket and you want to plan what you can make with it. The information needs to go from the visual part of the brain, so where you see object A, and it needs to go all the way to the planning part of your brain, where you can execute an idea on what to make for dinner, so region B. As a young, healthy adult, information would travel via this course. So the shortest pathway between A and B be along the red lines, and it would take 3 hops. So you go from here to this dot, from here to this dot, and from here to this dot. Now, as an older adult, some of the brain regions, remember, are shrinking. Some of the connections are no longer reliable due to natural degenerative processes. So now, for information to go from A to B, it must go along this pathway. Now that takes 5 hops. While the information still gets there, it takes longer. So the brain network is less efficient. Eventually, information may get lost along the way, and it may not even reach its destination at all. Scientists have shown there is, in fact, a relationship between processing speed and connectivity, such that decreased connectivity is associated with slower processing speed. In this case, processing speed is how quickly you can think or perform a really simple task, like pressing a key on a computer in response to a stimuli. Functional connectivity, so this is a type of brain connectivity, is just like structural connectivity, which is what we've been talking about thus far. Except functional connectivity uses fMRI instead of regular MRI. So instead of brain regions being connected by white matter connections, functional connectivity says that brain regions are connected to each other if they both light up in the scanner at the same time, i.e. their activity is correlated. So functional connectivity is if one brain region is active, how likely is it that this one is as well? And if it's strongly likely or very likely, then those two regions are connected. So these researchers found that people with decreased functional connectivity, so one brain region lighting up and the others that are supposed to aren't lighting up, they had slower processing speeds. Researchers have also found that reduced connectivity between brain regions that control movement is associated with slower movement. So in this case, the reduced connectivity was found in these areas. So we have the prefrontal cortex, which is really important for planning and controlling your actions. We have the premotor area, which guides the body movements with sensory feedback. We have the motor cortex, which controls physical movements. And we have the supplementary motor area, which is important for planning complex movements. These regions, their connectivity was decreased. And in people whose connectivity was decreased between these regions, they had slower movements. Because these regions were less able to communicate and talk to one another, which is a natural process of aging, the resulting movement is slower and more laborious. We see this in people who are aging every day. So let's bring everything together. As we age, we move slower and we think slower. Why? Because our brain connectivity decreases. Because the gray matter regions, the airports of the brain, and the white matter connections, the flight path between them, are affected by natural age-related degenerative processes. So we are less able to maintain the integrity of the connections that allow for efficient processing of information. And remember, the brain is a whole network. So if one part of the network is badly affected, it may have knock-on effects and impact the whole rest of the network as well, just like air traffic networks. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this has been really helpful to your understanding of brain aging.